At 10, Labour says there's a cry for change after the biggest ever shift of votes to win a by-election in the party's history. They triumphed in Selby and Ainsty, while the Lib Dems took Somerton and Frome from the Conservatives, but the Tories did cling on in Uxbridge and South Ruislip by just a few hundred votes.
We've shown, I think, that by changing the party, by making sure that the priorities of the Labour Party are the priorities of working people, that we can win, and we can win anywhere.
Westminster's been acting like the next election is a done deal. The Labour Party's been acting like it's a done deal. The people of Uxbridge just told all of them that it's not.
Well, we'll take a look at what the results could mean for the next general election. Also tonight, Donald Trump will go on trial for illegally possessing classified documents next May, just 6 months before the presidential election. A first look aboard the controversial barge set to house asylum seekers moored off the Dorset coast. England are on top in the fourth Ashes Test, but they'll have to beat the rain if they want to beat the Aussies.
I left my heart.
And tributes to the singer Tony Bennett, who's died aged 96.
San Francisco.
And on BBC London, more on the Tories winning in Uxbridge and South Ruislip. It came down to fewer than 500 votes. So was ULEZ expansion the deciding factor?
Hello there. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says there's been a cry for change from voters after his party won the Selby and Ainsty by-election in North Yorkshire. They successfully overturned a massive Conservative majority of 20,000, the biggest shift in votes to Labour in a by-election in the party's history. But Rishi Sunak insists the Conservatives can still win the next general election, despite not only losing in Selby, but also beaten by the Lib Dems in the by-election in Somerton and Frome in the West Country. The Prime Minister points to the narrow victory in the London seat of Uxbridge and South Ruislip as a cause for optimism. Well, let's look at the results in a little bit more detail. And in Selby and Ainsty, Labour won the seat from the Conservatives, with Keir Mather, who's 25, becoming the youngest MP in the Commons. He secured close to 16,500 votes. In Somerton and Frome, the Liberal Democrat Sarah Dyke won a dramatic victory, bagging more than 21,000 votes. But the Conservatives clung on to Uxbridge and South Ruislip by the slimmest of majorities, with Steve Tuckwell receiving nearly 14,000 votes, just 495 ahead of Labour. Well, we'll have plenty of analysis on what the results could mean for a general election. But first, here's our political editor, Chris Mason.
A thumbs up from Keir Starmer this morning, but he had to get on a train to find a spot to celebrate.
We are now approaching Selby.
Destination, Yorkshire. Selby and Ainsty had a rock-solid Conservative majority. Until, that is, it didn't. Labour's win here, then, unquestionably one heck of an achievement.
You voted for change. You put your trust in the Labour Party. And we hear you. We hear that cry for change, away from the chaos, away from those rising bills, the crumbling public services, a cry for change. And we will deliver. We will deliver through Keir Mather here, and we'll deliver with the next Labour government.
This is what jubilation looks like for Labour, winning big in a place where they don't expect to win. And yet, there's just that sense of the jitters because of what happened in London.
Steve Tuckwell, the Conservative Party candidate, 13,965.
Delight in the middle of the night from Conservative activists in northwest London, squeaking home in a contest many, including many Tories, thought they'd lose.
OK, wow.
QA breakfast visit to Ruislip from the Prime Minister and an outbreak of applause in the doorway of a greasy spoon. Rishi Sunak didn't expect to be meeting jubilant supporters today, nor getting the chance to smile on camera.
Westminster's been acting like the next election's a done deal. The Labour Party's been acting like it's a done deal. The people of Uxbridge just told all of them that it's not. Now, no one expected us to win here, but Steve's victory demonstrates that when confronted with the actual reality of the Labour Party, when there's an actual choice on a matter of substance at stake, people vote Conservative.
That matter of substance is this, London's ultra-low emission zone, or ULEZ, being extended next month to the outer suburbs and charging drivers of the most polluting transport. Labour say it cost them the election here because plenty of folk blame it on the Labour Mayor of London.
The decision to expand the ultra-low emission zone was a tough one, but it's the right one. But we're going to listen to Londoners, right? Because, you know, Londoners are struggling through this cost of living crisis, but Londoners also suffer the consequences of air pollution.
It's not clear what listening actually means, so after his Yorkshire hugs and cheers, I thought I'd ask the Labour leader. Should the expansion of the ULEZ scheme in London be scrapped?
Well, there's no doubt that that was the reason we didn't win in Uxbridge yesterday. And that's why I think we all need to reflect on that. The Mayor needs to reflect on that.
But what does reflecting mean? Does that mean scrapping it? Does it mean postponing it?
Well, we need to reflect on it. The Mayor needs to reflect on it. But because it was the reason we didn't win in Uxbridge.
What does reflecting on ULEZ mean, though? Does it mean scrapping it? I put that question to you again and you're not answering it.
Well, we've got to look at the result. We've got to reflect. The Mayor needs to reflect. And it's too early to say what should happen next.
The Conservatives took a pasting from Labour in Yorkshire and the Liberal Democrats delivered the same treatment in Somerset. The Lib Dems love a bit of cheesy political panto. This, their latest wheeze, a cardboard confetti cannon, as they celebrated a stonking win in Somerton and Froome.
I'm really starting to like by-elections. What we achieved here is nothing short of spectacular. You know, the trend was clear. The trend was clear even before last night. But now it's certain. The Liberal Democrats are back in the West Country.
After these elections, Labour are one up on the Conservatives. The Liberal Democrats are as well. But the Tories have been spared the 3-0 thrashing many predicted. Chris Mason, BBC News in Selby.
And more from Chris a little later. But what could the by-election results mean ahead of the next general election? Our political correspondent Leila Nathu is here with more. Hi there.
Clive, thank you. Well, it was a dramatic set of results all round. But what are the lessons for the Conservatives, for Labour and the Liberal Democrats? Let's look at each seat in a bit more detail. In Selby and Ainsty, Labour overturned their largest ever majority at a by-election, picking up 46% of total votes. This was a seat way down Labour's target list that the Tories have held since its creation. Here, Labour outperformed their current lead in opinion polls. The party secured a 23.7% swing away from the Tories, a big boost for Labour, the kind of gains it needs to make to win power at the next election. It's a result that will leave many Conservative MPs in seats they consider to be safe, wondering if they need to think again. Now, there was a spectacular victory for the Liberal Democrats in Somerton and Froome. The party won a 55% share of the vote, the fourth by-election win for the Lib Dems since 2021, continuing the trend of slowly reversing their post-coalition wipeout, this time in their former heartland of the southwest. With a swing of 29% here, the party now says it's targeting 15 other seats in the region with smaller majorities and is confident of an electoral comeback. The polling expert, Professor Sir John Curtis, says the results across the board show the Tories are in a deep electoral hole.
The Conservative vote is down by 21 points. It's very similar to the 18-point drop that the opinion polls are registering. This is a party that faces a very substantial challenge to restore its fortunes between now and the general election.
Now, in Uxbridge and South Ruislip, though, Labour and the Tories were pretty much neck and neck when it came to share of the vote. The Tories there at around 45%, Labour just behind on 44%. Both parties say the contest went the Tories' way because of a local issue, the expansion of London's ultra-low emission zone. Now, there was a 6.7% swing to Labour, lower than the swing implied by recent polls and not enough to clinch it for the opposition. Labour will certainly be asking why it fell short. So a win each for 3 parties, plenty for all of them to digest, but it could still be 18 months until a general election, a long way to go until the real test of public opinion. Clive.
OK, thank you, Leila Nathu there. Chris is here, hot foot off the train from Selby and Ainsley. Well done on getting back in time. But you've also spent time in the other 2 constituencies as well over the last few weeks. What's your takeaway from these results?
It's a good question, because we've had this blizzard of numbers, haven't we, that Leila was talking through, this deluge of rhetoric today. And by-elections can kind of be the quirky cousins of democracy, because they get a greater amount of attention than any one seat would get at a general election. They're not about picking a government, and they are ripe for people to protest in all sorts of different directions. So they're mesmerising and they are dizzying. But I think what we can conclude definitively is that things are bleak for the Conservatives. They've been behind in the opinion polls by a long way for a long time. And these set of by-elections, for what they are worth, as an imperfect measure of the national opinion, is one where the Conservatives are struggling with real votes in real ballot boxes as well as in the opinion polls. Now, not as bleak as it could have been because of that narrow victory for them in North West London, but there'll be a whole load of Conservative MPs tonight, even those who think of themselves as sitting in supposedly safe seats, who are thinking, ooh, safe seats? I mean, what are they now? Because the whole notion of a safe seat looking at these by-elections has been fed into the shredder.
Yeah, OK, so which of the party leaders then is going to be having nightmares when they go to bed tonight, or is going to be having fabulous sweet dreams?
I think there is scope for all of them to toss and turn a little bit, to be honest. So we've set out why Rishi Sunak might be doing a bit of that. He knew that when he took on the job. Yeah. It was always going to be difficult. It remains difficult. Let's look at Labour and the Liberal Democrats. So Labour first. Stonking victory for them in North Yorkshire. No question about that. All of the superlatives are deserved there. But that result in London with the quirk, that row about the ultra-low emissions zone, where the leader, the party leader and the Labour Mayor of London are awkwardly in public trying to work out what to do and are clearly conflicted about what to do. And then that fear, I suspect, from them that a single issue campaign in a constituency they would have hoped to win was sufficiently strong to derail their victory. So they'll be nervous around that, but overall hoping that they can still win the general election. As for the Liberal Democrats, they are cock-a-hoop. There is no doubt about that. Their win in Somerset, colossal. But a small party with limited resources, how does it manage in a general election when it has to contest 20, 30, 40 seats really competitively, and all of those door knockers and leafleters and envelope stuffers are spread out all over the place? So enough pondering for all of them to do. And one final thought, Clive, all of this involves the power of the people, doesn't it? When you get to election time, the power leaves the politicians, the power leaves those of us who talk about politics, the power is in the hands of the people. And last night, as on so many nights, they leave plenty for all of our political leaders to ponder.
Indeed. OK, Chris, good to see you. Chris Mason, our political editor there. And there's more analysis of all the results over on Newsnight on BBC Two after this programme with Mark Urban.
Clive, tonight the parties are trying to make sense of that big swing against the Conservatives, looking afresh at what appeals to voters and what turns them off. We'll be talking to senior figures in the parties and leading experts, all in search of a better idea of the choices we'll get as voters come the next general election.
That's to come in Newsnight over on BBC Two. Now, a judge has ruled that the former US President Donald Trump will face trial next May on charges of unlawfully possessing classified documents at his home in Florida. Our correspondent Nomia Iqbal is at the White House for us tonight. Nomia, this is just 6 months potentially before the presidential election next year.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, isn't it, Clive? And you know, nothing constitutionally stops Donald Trump from running for the White House, and in some ways this probably strengthens his bid because his legal woes, and certainly there's evidence that it boosts his standing amongst Republican voters. Now, with this trial, Trump faces 37 counts of allegations relating to withholding classified documents relating to national security at his home in Mar-a-Lago. He's accused of making false statements, conspiring to obstruct justice. He denies all of this. Now, the actual trial date is the 20th of May, and this is right in the middle of the election season, and it will be at a point where the primaries are pretty much wrapped up. He'll probably be well on his way to being the Republican Party's presidential nominee. And Clive, there are other legal cases. He's also going on trial in New York, criminal trial over allegations of falsifying business documents. There's a grand jury here in DC that is deciding imminently whether to indict him for a third time over alleged crimes related to January the 6th. It's pretty hard to keep up. His legal team have made it clear that they believe the only way he can beat these legal charges is by getting back into the House behind me, by becoming president again. We know that presidential elections are historic, they're intense, but next year is shaping up to be truly extraordinary.
Indeed. OK, Nomia Iqbal in Washington, thank you. A British man who killed his seriously ill wife at their home in Cyprus has been cleared of her murder. David Hunter was instead found guilty of manslaughter after suffocating his wife Janice at their home near Paphos in 2021. He maintained her death was assisted suicide, and his wife, who had blood cancer, had begged him to end her misery. Our correspondent Fiona Trott was in court.
The face of a man who feared he was spending the rest of his life in prison. Now there's hope. It's a feeling he used to have, back when he and Janice were happy.
Well, you see the lovely blue sea there.
This was the retirement they planned for, a reward after David's 40 years of working down the mine.
Beautiful Paphos sunset.
But inside their home, Janice was suffering. She had blood cancer, so David killed her and tried to take his own life.
Daddy, just concentrate on me. Daddy, you love me, you know you do, I'm your girl.
The moments afterwards captured in an emotional video call to his daughter back in the UK.
Dad was making nappies for her out of towels. She had frequent accidents. My dad was carrying her into the shower and cleaning her up. He said, you know, she hated that kind of loss of dignity, she hated it. It destroyed her. You know, she'd be crying as he cleaned her, saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Leslie never believed the killing was premeditated. Today, the judges agreed. They said her dad wasn't cold enough, calculated enough to murder his sick wife.
The first thing we're going to do is we're going to be pushing for a suspended sentence. This is a type of offence where a suspended sentence is appropriate. It's not something someone commits again. It's not something where someone really needs to be punished any further. He's lost his loving wife. So even if the court was to give him a short custodial sentence, it could result in him being released fairly soon.
And if he is released soon, he'll have support.
Yeah, it's gone up.
It's gone up, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's gone up again.
After the hearing, David's old mining friend checked the family fundraising page. He's travelled all the way from Northumberland to be here.
He won't be short of company, he won't be short of help, he won't be short of shoulders to cry on if he needs them. You know, we're there for him, not just today, but every day.
David Hunter's due to be sentenced next week. He will be punished, but his daughter says today's verdict was the best possible outcome for a family still grieving. Fiona Trott, BBC News, Paphos.
Let's take a look at some of the day's other top stories now. And the fast food chain McDonald's has launched a new investigation handling unit after the BBC reported dozens of workers claiming incidents of sexual assault, racism and bullying among staff. The chief executive of McDonald's UK and Ireland has apologised, calling the allegations personally and professionally shocking. Members of a head teachers' union in England have accepted a 6.5% pay offer. The Association of School and College Leaders said members who voted had overwhelmingly backed the deal. 4 teaching unions have now accepted the offer, meaning strikes planned for the autumn are unlikely to go ahead. And India has banned most rice exports after monsoon rains damaged crops and sent domestic prices soaring. The country usually provides around 40% of the rice sold on international markets. There are concerns the move will drive up global prices, making it harder to tackle food price inflation. And visitors to Dorset's Jurassic Coast have been warned to stay away from the top of cliffs and avoid walking beneath them after a huge landslide onto the beach at Seatown. It comes after another major rock fall 2 years ago. Dorset Council said that areas of the coastline remain unstable and dangerous. Now, the government says it's aiming to have 3,000 asylum seekers and migrants moved out of hotels and living in former military camps and on barges by the autumn. But close to the number have already crossed the channel in small boats in the last month alone. Today, the Home Office allowed cameras on board barge the Bibi Stockholm, moored in Portland Harbour in Dorset, which is expected to start housing people from next week. Here's Dan Johnson.
After so much debate, finally a chance to see the conditions in which 500 men will live. This is the floating alternative to hotels. Cheaper, the government says, basic but functional.
Let me take you in one of the rooms, show you what it's like.
Bunk beds have helped increase the capacity, and some extra cabins have replaced communal space.
It doesn't feel too uncomfortable. It's relatively modern, a bit like maybe a 1980s cross-channel ferry, but then it's nowhere near its maximum capacity yet. That might really change things.
There's a treatment room to limit the pressure on health services. That's one of the concerns local people raised.
What do you think of what you've seen?
Looks okay. Looks okay. I don't know whether I want to live on it.
As a temporary measure, I can't see really there's a problem with it, other than for the locals.
They're not prisoners, they'll be free to come and go, and activities are planned to fill the days, but there is still opposition.
This looks like accommodation which would be fine if people were in it for a matter of days, but we're housing hundreds of people in it, many of whom will have fled war zones, is not appropriate accommodation for them. And the government is having to use this because it's failed to manage the asylum system.
We have worked very closely with Dorset Council, Portland Port and with the local police services to make sure that we minimise any impact on the local community, as well as looking after the safety of those on board the vessel.
The balance here is demonstrating a tough line on immigration, being serious about stopping dangerous migrant boats, but also showing these alternative conditions aren't cruel or inhumane. The first 50 men are due on board in a week or two. Dan Johnson, BBC News, Portland.
Well, our news correspondent Simon Jones is here. Simon, you've been tracking the Channel crossings for a long time. The government wants 3,000 people out of hotels, but yet just 500 are going to end up on that barge that we saw in that report. How's the government going to pull this off, given the large numbers of migrants who are coming over?
Yes, the government is desperate to get migrants out of hotels because it's costing the taxpayer millions of pounds each day. So as well as these 500 places on board the barge, it's going to use 2 former military sites and create 2,500 places there. Those sites are in Essex and in Lincolnshire. But there's lots of opposition to that, and it's also facing a legal challenge. But the question, as you pose, what difference is 3,000 places really going to make in the scheme of things? Because when you look at the figures of the number who've crossed the channel by small boats so far this month, that's almost 3,000. So that would take up those places, bringing the annual total so far to around 14,000 people. And as well as people arriving by small boat, people are continuing to arrive in the backs of lorries, although in smaller numbers. And the government very keen to talk about illegal migration and stopping the boats. But when you look at legal migration, the number of people who arrived in the UK last year legally was 25 times the number who arrived by small boat.
Sure. OK. Simon, thank you. Simon Jones. The legendary jazz singer Tony Bennett, considered one of the last great American crooners, has died. He was 96. In a career spanning 7 decades, he won 20 Grammy Awards for songs including The Way You Look Tonight and I Left My Heart in San Francisco. Here's our arts correspondent, David Silito.
I left my heart in San Francisco.
Tony Bennett, suave, charming, elegant. In the world of jazz and the great American songbook, he was a master, the last of the greats from his generation.
Without a song.
But making it look this effortless took years of hard work.
We used to do 7 to 10 shows a day. In the old days, I mean, if you had a hit recording, you would play the Paramount Theater, let's say, and you'd start at 10 in the morning and leave the theater at 10 at night.
Where Gigolo and Gigolette can take a kiss without regret.
But it turned the man born Anthony Dominic Benedetto into a star who was also an accomplished painter, a campaigner for civil rights.
Oh, the good life, full of fun, seems to be the ideal.
And for his fans and many friends, it's the end of an era. Among them, the son of the BBC's Benny Green, who championed him in the UK.
I can remember as a kid, sat at tables listening to Tony and my father talking about music and art and culture and politics and everything in between. You know, he was a magnificent flag waver for equal rights and equality, and he fought racism.
You've got me flying high and wide on a magic carpet.
There was a moment when he wondered if he was going out of fashion, but then a new generation began to call. Christina Aguilera, Amy Winehouse, Lady Gaga.
I just said, I'd love to do an album with you someday.
I'm making music with a legend.
And so there he was in his 80s, playing to some of the biggest crowds of his career. There have been many tributes today, but perhaps we only need to mention one, from another singer, a certain Frank Sinatra, who once said, "For my money, Tony Bennett is the best singer in the business."
Tony Bennett, who's died at the age of 96. England dominated the third day of the fourth Ashes Test at Old Trafford. They built a huge first innings total, with Australia ending the day on 113 for 4 in their second innings, still 162 behind. But the weather forecast for the weekend is grim. Here's Joe Wilson.
Keep your bat raised and your spirits higher. It will take more than rain to stop England, hopefully. At 11 a.m, play began promptly, and Ben Stokes batted with his usual urgency.
Gives himself room.
51 for the captain, others made strong contributions. The weather didn't really interfere at all. Well, only briefly. Quick, look now, it's Johnny Bairstow. He made 99 not out from just 81 balls. This 6 in particular, even Ben Stokes couldn't quite believe. England made 592 to lead by 275. For Bairstow, well, he's been through a lot recently, not least a leg broken in 3 places.
Of course, to be 10 months, still now 10 months post-operation from that, when you're told that you might not walk properly again, never mind run again or play professional sport. I'm immensely proud of the determination that I've shown and commitment to get back.
So England's task now, bowl out Australia again, but 3 factors in the mix: time, score, weather. Sprinting in like there was no tomorrow, Mark Wood. So quick Usman Khawaja could barely feel the ball touch his bat. Out. Now Steve Smith. Faint touch, yes. And there was another catch for Johnny Bairstow. Smith gone for 17. From this Wood delivery, Travis Head was forced to defend, but only to the waiting Duckett. Wood's pace made all the difference. Australia 113 for 4. England needs 6 more wickets. The weather suggests they'll need patience over the weekend, but they deserve to bowl with true hope. Joe Wilson, BBC News, Old Trafford.
Now, England's women footballers begin their World Cup campaign tomorrow, taking on Haiti. It comes as the England goalkeeper, Mary Earps, says it's hurtful fans can get replica England outfield shirts, but not her goalkeeping jersey. The BBC has approached the makers of the strips, Nike, for comment, but there's been no response. From Brisbane, here's our sports correspondent, Katie Gornall.
England's players have been enjoying their downtime down under. They've been whale watching, meeting the locals,
so sick,
and experiencing the culture. But now they've moved from the beach to Brisbane, and it's about to get serious. As European champions, England have a target on their backs, as does Kira Walsh. The England midfielder is one of the best in the world, but if she feels any pressure, she's not showing it.
I think for us, you know, we've got full belief in this squad and kind of what we're about and what we're setting out to do. And yeah, for me, it's just really exciting to see where this team can go.
Oh, and what a save, Earps! It's also a team not afraid to speak its mind. Mary Earps has hit out at England's kit manufacturers Nike for not making her goalkeeper shirt available to the public. Her friends and family are unable to buy it, and it's notably absent from Nike's shop fronts and promotional material. Earps said in an interview to newspapers the situation was hugely disappointing and very hurtful. She said, "It's something I've been fighting behind closed doors," adding that it's become very evident that it's not possible and there's not going to be an acceptable solution for the young kids out there. Karen Bardsley, once a teammate of Earps at England, believes the position doesn't get the respect it deserves.
I think it speaks to kind of a bigger picture around maybe the position and how well it's valued in the game itself, which I think is massively undervalued. The fact that people don't see goalkeeping as being something that's worth investing in, which I think is really disappointing.
Whilst that row rumbles on, another seems to be resolved. Captain Millie Bright will wear a FIFA-approved Unite for Inclusion armband tomorrow, with the One Love version effectively banned. That she's back to full fitness is a huge boost for England.
When England walk out onto this pitch to face Haiti, it will be a very different looking team to that which won the Euros last summer. Injuries to key players like Frank Kirby and Leah Williamson means that the spine of the team has had to change. It has dampened expectations, but still England remain one of the favourites to lift the World Cup trophy.
The challenge almost couldn't be greater for Haiti, one of the lowest ranked sides at the World Cup.
They're here for the first time in the tournament. They've done really, really well. And we're trying to compete with every opponent who's in front of us. So we're trying to play a good game tomorrow and win it.
Off the pitch, England have found their voice. Now comes the time, once again, for them to make their mark on it. Katie Gornall, BBC News, Brisbane.
Before we get the weather with Thomas, just look at this. Extremely hot temperatures in Italy have given way to storms, with a tornado tearing through the northwest of the country, battering buildings in a densely populated part of Milan. An extremely bad weather warning has been issued for the whole of northern Italy. One hopes a little bit calmer here, Thomas.
Yes, and we're in Oz, though, after that.
Anyway, our Emerald Land is going to be windswept tomorrow, rain on the way. It's not a pretty picture. It's not going to feel like July. It's going to feel more like end of September, perhaps early October. On the cool side as well, here's the big picture with the undulating jet stream. So this dip here is going to help to spawn an area of low pressure, multiple weather fronts heading in our direction. Now, this is the rainfall accumulation over the next couple of days or so. Watch that scale there. This is where we'll see most of the rain, so parts of northwestern England into the Lake District. We're sort of touching on 70 millimetres of rain in one or two spots. For most of us, it won't be quite as much as that. But a wet night ahead, not in central and northern Scotland, though. Here, clearer skies overnight, and in the sheltered glens, 4 degrees Celsius, but for most of us, it's in the range of around, say, 12 to 14 degrees. So here's that area of low pressure as it sweeps in off the Atlantic, moves across Ireland. It's not one coherent band of rain, so it may arrive, it may start raining where you are in the morning, then the rain may ease, perhaps a little bit of sunshine, and then the rain's going to come back again. So it's sort of going to sway from side to side, well, not literally, with that area of low pressure sweeping across, and strong winds to near gale force there in the southwest of the country. And here it is tracking across the UK, the centre of that low, through the course of Saturday night into Sunday. And this weather front here stretches right across from the North Sea, almost into Ireland. It's going to be moving very slowly before it clears away. So I think across this portion of the country, still some rain around on Sunday. And then eventually things will start improving as we head into Monday and Tuesday. But if you look at the weather icons here, there's a lot of rainy, showery icons, and those temperatures are subdued below the average for the time of the year. So a real mixed bag this weekend and into next week. Back to you.
OK, Thomas, thank you. Thomas Schaffenacker there. That's it. The news continues here on BBC One as we join our colleagues across the nations and the regions for all the news where you are. Bye for now.